So welcome friends and book lovers. Thank you very much for joining this group. This is a Bookish Apostle group where we, every month we have a review of a book. And this time the review of this book I have undertaken. The book's name is Bounce. It is by Matthew Philip Said. The Might of Talent and the Power of Practice. Very interesting book. In fact, I had read this book some time back, I think 2-3 years back. The book, in fact, was published in the year 2010, but I had read it a little later, and I found this book quite interesting. Especially, I had requested in my messages to you that even the young group in this, you should tell them that they should attend this session, because even for the young group, there are so many learnings in this book. So let us, on this background, I will just start the presentation here. I normally start all my presentations, whether it is of the financial markets or of otherwise, with a quote. So the journey of a lifetime starts with the turning of a page. And this is a very interesting saying which I liked yesterday. And that is why, it is really, if you are not reading, probably you are missing out a lot. So please, in case you were reading and you have stopped reading, I would request that everyone must have the habit of reading. In fact, yes, in fact, I read on an average one book per month. Now, this is an average, so many a times it happens that, a couple of months I don't read the book. But I make it a point that you should read at least one book per month. So, well, I will skip this slide because I am already introduced by Rucha. Thank you, Rucha. Now, the aim of this book review. So, what is the aim? What out of this book review? What is the basic idea? What is the basic purpose? So, the basic idea is to give you a synopsis of the book, so that you may take an informed decision whether to read the entire book or not. Now, this is a normal thing, because there are so many books available in the market, so many new books come in, all may not be as interesting. So what I will be doing here is I'll just point out some important observations I had while I read this book. And then you can decide if it appeals to you. You can sort of buy the book, and or you can go through the various other media. It is also available on digital media, so you can buy that and you can read it. Now, about the author. So the Bounce, the book is written by Matthew Philip Said. He is a best-selling British author. This is, in fact, this was the first book. After that, he has another, I think, 3 books or so he has published. In fact, interestingly, he is one of the international table tennis champion. He is, I think, the 3 times champion of the Commonwealth in the Commonwealth Games in table tennis, and also he has represented England for, I think, 2 times. And he lives in Silverdale Road, Reading, Berkshire, Southeast England. In his book, he has mentioned that he is a commoner who became international sports star. So he had ordinary parents. They were, in fact, not even sports people, no nepotism and no specific advantages to become an international star. But interestingly, again, in his book, in the first chapter itself, he indicates that the street where he lives, that is Silverdale Road, was home to many top national players. He has mentioned that for a period of 1980s, there is a specific period in 1980s where this one street and its vicinity produced more outstanding players than the rest of the country, that is in England combined. So very interesting observation here. Now the book's format is something like this. Broadly he has, there are three sections to the book. One is the first, he'll address the talent myth or myth, as we can, the pronunciation can be different. Then you have paradoxes of the mind, and then deep reflections. These are the three sections of the book. In my presentation, I have taken more elements from the first section, because that is where most of the cream of the book or the content is there. So I'll be talking more about the first section, but yes, I will also be talking about some aspects about the latter part of the book. Now, the myth of talent. Now, the entire book tries to give you an idea as to what is talent. Is it a natural inborn ability, or is it a result of practice? So that is what he addresses, and that is what he tries to find out. A study of violinists gives a good revelation. Now, there was one psychologist named Andrew Erickson who had conducted interviews of three groups of violinists. These are musicians in a German music school. Now, the first group was good, but not very outstanding. The second one was better, but they were aiming to be outstanding. And then there was a third group of students who were actually outstanding. Now, what they did is they conducted the interviews for all of these groups. The first thing which they observed was that most of the attributes were similar in all the groups. The age of starting to play violin, the age when they decided, when these children decided when they want to become musicians, by the age of 15, that is, the average number of teachers they had. So they, on an average, they had 4 teachers, and the average number of instruments they could play. So including violin, they could play on one more instrument. But these were something which were very similar to all the groups. But what was different? The one major difference was the number of hours they had practiced. And the actual figures were something like this. These are the average figures for the groups. The first group, which was good but not very outstanding, the average number of hours was around 4,000. Second group, aiming to be outstanding, they want to become outstanding, then it was around 8,000 hours. But the outstanding group had almost 10,000 hours of practice. Now this is huge. At their age, this is really huge. So the conclusion of this study was, talent is nothing but a result of a large number of hours of practice. So the more you practice, the more talented you become. That is the conclusion of this thing. There is one more section of this. In fact, I had in my message, I had written that you will need some pen or paper. If you have, good. Otherwise, you can use your mobile also. Nowadays, we have notes on mobile also. So I'll show you. This is one a series of alphabets, around 13, 14 of them. Just observe them. Now, on your paper or on your mobile, just write down how many of these alphabets you remember. I'll give you around 10 to 15 seconds. Okay. Now, the average number, this was an experiment conducted, and the average number of alphabets which people could remember in a time span of 15 seconds was 7 to 8 only. But now this is a second, I'm giving you another word. ABNORMALITIES. Now, how many of these words will you remember? The obvious answer is you will remember all of them. The reason is it is in a structured way, it is in a format, it is in a particular group. So abnormalities. So even if you do not know, you will start typing it. So the crux of this was that we as human beings, we are very much, we put everything into chunks, so into groups, and that is how we remember. So people who are having the ability of remembering, in fact, in the book he says that people who remember, long series of numbers also use something like this, the grouping technique, as they say, or the chunking. The word used was chunking technique. Now, a similar experiment, very similar to this, was done on chess players. So, some chess players who are expert in their game were called, and there was another group where novice chess players were called. Now, they had a specific placement of chess pieces, and both were given some specific time, and then asked to recollect where the pieces were. So in the initial phases, the expert chess players could be, they were very fast. But when these chess pieces were placed randomly, even the experts were not able to recollect as fast. So the conclusion again in this experiment was that when we remember, we are actually, in our mind, we are putting everything in a group or in a chunk, as the author says. Now, I presume many of you have heard about this term or word, deep blue. If not, one image will give you that recollection. Deep blue was actually IBM's computer, and that IBM's computer actually it played chess. I think it was in 1995-96. It played chess with Garry Kasparov, the champion. Now let us try to understand this thing. Man versus machine. Now machine, Deep Blue, had a very good capacity. The capacity was of processing 10 million, yes, you have read this right, 10 million positions per second, chess positions, it was able to process. Whereas, just think about it, Garry Kasparov's ability is just 3 positions, chess positions per second. Now, human versus machine. Now, what ultimately happened? So let us, I will just read out from the book. I'll just read out what happened. After 8 days, just before the 40th move in the final game on 17th of February, Kasparov took his watch from the table and put it on his wrist. This was a familiar sign that the world champion believed the match was nearing its conclusion. The audience in the lecture hall held its breath. 3 moves later, Dr. Hugh, who was handling the Deep Blue machine, he rose slowly and offered his hand to the opponent. The audience burst into a wild applause. Kasparov has triumphed. So yes, it was Garry Kasparov, the chess champion, who won. Surprised, even I was surprised. So why? Now, there is a reason for this. The reason is, again, in Kasparov's own words, the reason is, he says, but I simply understand the essence of the end game. I understand the way the game is played, whereas the computer does not. Its computational power was not enough to overcome my experience and intuitive appreciation of where the pieces should go, chess pieces should go. Now, this was the observation, that it is not the computational power, but So theoretically speaking, the machine was much more talented. Computational power was very fast, but there was more to that. In Kasparov's own words, if I had been playing this game against a human opponent, it would have actually been a draw. Means he would have not won. It would have been a draw. I simply understand, as I said in this, I understand the essence of the game in a way the computer did not understand. So, that is where the practice, and the more and more you play, the more and more the brain gets developed. It assumes a lot of things. After this, interesting case, thereafter the author provides many such instances of prodigal geniuses like Mozart, Tiger Woods, Beckham, Andre Agassi, etc. In fact, while reading this, I happened to read a very interesting quote here. That quote was by the Tiger Woods, that is a golf player. He says, uh, my dad never asked me to play golf. I asked him to. It is the child's desire to play that matters, not the parent's desire to have the child play. Probably we can extrapolate this to other areas like studies, career, and jobs. And that is what the author is trying to tell us. Now, the power of practice. So, here also there was one interesting, experiment, but psychologist S.W. Tyler remarks that when most people practice, they focus on things they can do effortlessly. And to this, Andrew Erickson, the psychologist, he adds, expert practice is different. Now, this is very important here. It entails considerable, specific, and sustained efforts to do something that you cannot do well, or probably you can't do it at all. So what you should focus on? You should focus on things which you are not very good at. And research across domains, across various fields, shows that it is only by working at what you can't do that you turn into the expert that you want to become. जो आता है वही करते जाएंगे तो that is fine, that is practice. But जो नहीं आ रहा है हमने, if I don't know something and I practice more and more, then I get a talent. I get more talented, or I get more better in that game. So the key word here is Andrew Erickson puts this. The word is purposeful practice, and this is very important. Practice is important, 10,000 hours is important, but what is important is purposeful practice. So the author, he says what is important is not the 10,000 hours of practice, but rather 10,000 hours of purposeful practice. In fact, he mentions, he gives this revelation in his book that he had to this extent, he had an advantage. He had a friend who was a fellow player from China, and he helped him. That Chinese player who was a friend of his, when he visited England, he gave him the practice of purposeful practice. For example, Matthew Said, he was the table tennis player. He was not very good at backhand. So the Chinese friend, he continuously gave him the practice of taking a backhand. And that is where ultimately he won, Matthew won, the various tournaments. So what is important is purposeful practice. Zero-sum games. This is one section which is interesting. And in fact, I like the author's viewpoint here. Probably you will also be able to relate to this. When a sports person or an artist, it could be a musician also, or a student, or we are in the field of investment, so investor, when he carries out any purposeful practice, it is surely he will benefit. because his game or his investments or his art will grow better, but it will be at the expense of someone else. So, zero sum. If I gain, someone else loses. And in the financial markets, this is totally true. So if I am gaining, if I am earning money, then someone else definitely is losing money. If I am losing someday, then someone has gained. So this is therefore a zero sum game. But if purposeful practice is practiced at the workplace, in that case, it will be a win-win situation. It will not be a zero-sum game. It will increase productivity and incomes, and ultimately it will benefit not only the firm, it will benefit others, society, as well as economy in general. So the author very rightly says that purposeful practice must be done in various aspects, especially in those areas where there is collective behavior, not individual behavior. There is one more section, which talks about the power of words. Now, this is also a very interesting study which I liked, so I thought let me put one slide on this. Researcher Carol Dweck conducted an experiment on 400 students. The students' age were only 11 years. Now, the experiment was that they were given a very, very simple puzzle. Now, once the puzzle was solved, it was a very simple one. So everybody could solve it. Now, half these students were told, in appreciation, they were told, you must be very smart at this. The other half were told, wow, you must have worked really hard for this. Now, there is a difference in these two. Telling someone you are very smart at this and telling someone you have really worked hard at this. Now, after this second experiment, round 2, these students were given a choice that you can select a hard test or you can select the easy test. Now, interestingly, the students who were told that you are very smart, they chose the easy one. But the students who were told that you are really working very hard for this, they chose the hard one. Because the people who thought they were smart, they were fearful of losing. If they could not solve that, what will happen? What will people say? What will my parents say? What will my teacher say? And round 3, they were actually given a really hard test. They, something that the 11-year-old could not solve. And the first group, that is the smart people, I mean, those who were said that you are smart, they could not solve it, obviously, because it was a very hard test. And they, went away halfway. Whereas those who are said that you are working really hard for this, they actually attempted the hard test and, they tried at least better in number of minutes of solving this. Now, this is something which, the author says that the power of words, what you tell to your, his coach, for example, his coach always tell him that you have really worked hard for it. So he was encouraging in a different way. So if you just keep saying that you are very smart at this, you are very smart at this, then probably the performance as a sports person or as any other individual, the performance might be affected negatively. Now, after this, this was the crux of the thing. And the later part of the book, it talks, about more about the psychological aspects. For example, the placebo effect. It also talks about choking and why sportsmen feel miserable after winning. So these are very interesting things. Once probably, if you read the book, it'll be more interesting. But here I would like to, read out to this group one small paragraph about what is choking. Now, choking is something which many of us have experienced, And even this author, the international table tennis player, even he has experienced this. So I'll just read out from the book. Uh, just give me one sec. Yes. So finally, now he says, finally, the microphone struck up and the crowd roared. And I stepped through the curtains into the light of the competition arena, the Olympic Games. So he's talking about the Olympic Games. I noticed that a large group of British spectators were in the stands waving the Union Jack, and I knew that back home, my family, my friends would be turning on their televisions. This was the match I had saved for a career, a contest that could be life transforming. And then it happened. What happened? The opponent, his name is Franz. Franz stroked the ball into a play. It was not a difficult one. It was not a difficult one to return. But I would have normally have not had any trouble in pouncing upon this. And yet, I was strangely late on returning the ball. My feet stuck in its original position. My racket jabbing at the ball in a way that was totally unfamiliar. My return missed the table by more than 2 feet. Now, what is happening here? The author says this is something which is experienced by many people. It is called choking. His, once he lost this particular game. He lost it by 21-8 and 21-4, which was a very pathetic score. And he says his coach came in and just said, "You have choked." Probably many of us have also experienced something similar here. Let me give you my example. When I was giving my CA final examination, CA final is a tough exam. I was giving my CA final examination. My the paper was advanced accountancy, and just 5 minutes before the exam, we are not supposed to have any paper with us, no books, nothing, and we are just supposed to sit there. 5 minutes before that, I thought I did not know anything about accountancy. I was totally blank. That is called choking. So I think many musicians or many singers are also having this. When we see a reality play, reality shows, we have seen many a times that a singer comes to the stage and he forgets what he's going to sing, or whatever. I mean, sur nahi tal nahi hai, malum nahi hai. Suddenly it erases. That is called choking, and that is something which is normal, he says, and it must be addressed, and a lot of research is right now going on to address this particular problem of choking. So in the latter part of the book, these sort of various psychological aspects are being discussed. So I hope this particular presentation, which especially talks about the might of talent and the power of practice, was interesting. And I can relate myself to the power of practice. Again, I track the stock markets on a daily basis. So I see a lot of price charts. We analyze price charts on a regular basis, every day. Every day, every hour. So probably I would be seeing thousands of charts in a year's time. And I've been doing this for the last probably 20-25 years. So just imagine the amount of price charts which we would have seen. And that is where the speed comes. So many times when my participants tell me, okay, how would you know that this is the pattern? So I say, I just know it. And this statement that I just know it is what is the power of practice. So I hope, friends, this has been a good session for you, something to learn about, something to reveal about. And thank you very much for patient listening. Now, as our format is, after this presentation, we will have a group discussion. If any one of you wants to share your own experiences, you can do that, and we will have a group discussion. Thank you very much. I'll just stop the screen share here. Yes. So tell me, who wants to share their own experiences?